Another Joe Rudolph preseason surprise based on what we saw in Tuesday evening's practice. It just might happen. I am Jack Sobel. This is Tyler James with Blue and Gold. We just get out of Notre Dame football practice. It is Tuesday night while we were recording this. You were watching this Wednesday morning at the earliest. But Tyler, we saw something very interesting on the offensive line that might affect Notre Dame's plans for week one.
Yeah, the person who we thought would be the first offensive tackle off the bench, Styles Prescott, taking reps at right guard next to Ashton Craig. So another entry into that right guard competition that refuses to end, and something that Notre Dame is interested in. Mike Denbrock talked about they put Styles Prescott there during the scrimmage on Friday and liked some of the things they saw, and continue to rep him this week in practice. And they're working towards trying to find an answer of who that starting right guard will be. He mentioned hopefully by the end of this week they have a plan of what that's going to look like so they can go into game-specific work for Wisconsin moving into next week. Yeah,
you said Prescott looked very natural at guard when they played him there during the scrimmage on Friday. And if I recall correctly, I think he was recruited as someone who played tackle in high school and had the size for it, but would potentially move to guard. You're more of a recruiting guy. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I think that was always a possibility. I mean, pretty much every offensive tackle has the possibility of maybe being a guard at some point, depending on how things play out. But yeah, he was the more of the athletic type working into an offensive line role at the college level, and so that's why he stayed at offensive tackle. But if he can bring that athleticism to guard and be able to make that transition, that's an interesting concept in terms of what Notre Dame's looking at. I think it makes their tackle depth certainly thinner if you put your first tackle off the bench at your starting right guard spot. But as we've seen before, Joe Rudolph is not afraid to try anything and everything during the preseason to figure out what he thinks his best five is.
Yeah, I've been on the beat. This is my fourth season now. I believe it's the fourth consecutive year the starting offensive line is not what we thought before fall camp opened. And I should clarify that with this is by no means over. It's still an open competition. I should also clarify that we saw no indication that Sullivan Absher, who is also one of the leading candidates to start at right guard, and so I think who we assumed would open the season there. We saw no indication that he is dealing with any kind of injury. He was working with the second team at right guard in the drill we saw. This was the drill that reporters first saw Anthony Knapp and Sam Pendleton working with the first team offensive line 2 years ago. They split the offensive line into right side and left side and put a center on both sides. And so they work offensive line concepts simultaneously, blocking concepts simultaneously. So on the right side, you saw Ashton Craig, Styles Prescott, and Gerby Lambert. On the left side, you saw Joe Otting with Anthony Knapp and Will Black. So no indication on how realistic the possibility of Craig playing right guard, Otting playing center is, but it certainly looks less realistic at this point than Prescott making the starting lineup.
Yeah, and Ashton Craig is someone they're still trying to figure out exactly what his availability is, like how much he can play in that season opener. Mike Denbrock mentioned that they want to get some clarity, hopefully by the end of the week, to know, okay, what are we planning for next week going into that Sunday opener. And certainly positive. He said he's been a welcomed addition in terms of being able to do more of the team stuff as they keep moving towards the season opener. So he's getting close. He said he doesn't believe he's quite there yet, but they're inching closer day by day.
Yeah, and I think from what we saw in practice, like today, he was doing a drill where he was working on reaching a guy and run to the side with him, and he looked good. He was moving well. It didn't seem like there was anything slowing down his movement skills from that center position. But again, we will see where his progression takes Notre Dame entering week one. Elsewhere in offense, we did get a bit of a look at the wide receiver groupings at the moment. Again, this is not necessarily what their depth chart is going to look like in week one, but we saw routes. This is how little we've seen in practice. We saw routes on air for the first time in a while. So this is how Notre Dame lined up at wide receiver. And bear in mind, Quincy Porter still not practicing. You said you saw him on the exercise bike. So at this point, I think we'd be shocked if he's ready for week one. But here we go. First team: Micah Gilbert, Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison. Second team: Jerome Bettis Jr., Mylan Graham, Cam Williams. Third team: Elijah Burst playing that boundary spot that Marcus Freeman kind of implied the other day. Bubba Frazier, Matt Jeffrey. Matt Jeffrey, by the way, is someone who Mike Denbrock was over the moon about, unprompted in interviews. And fourth team: Devin Fitzgerald, Kadon Finley, and Logan Saldate. So any takeaways from that?
Yeah, that third group is the group when Mike Denbrock was asked, sort of after your first four, who we think we all know, we're talking about Gilbert, Faison, Graham, and Greathouse. Those are the top four receivers that are available right now for Notre Dame. Who's next after that? Matt Jeffrey was the first guy he mentioned, and then he also mentioned Bubba Frazier. He mentioned Elijah Burris, and so that third listing there is creeping up in terms of making an impact and making an impression, at least with offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock. And so So it'd be interesting to see how deep that rotation goes. I feel like every year they talk about how deep they're going to be able to go, and it doesn't ever go that deep. And we're going to see what that looks like for Notre Dame this season.
He did seem to imply that like Jeffrey is closer to the top four than he is to everyone else. Like he
mentioned him alone. Like it was Matt Jeffrey, and he talked about him for a while. Then stopped talking about receivers, and so then we had to circle back and ask about more receivers, and he mentioned those other guys.
And for what it's worth, we got last thing on the offense. For what it's worth, we got no indication as far as who the backup quarterback is going to be in practice. Eric Hansen has reported extensively on that, so check out blueandgold.com. Tyler,
I'll add something on that. Mike Denbrock did mention like QB2 and QB3 in practices throughout the season, they're probably going to both be with the varsity. So the differences between those guys isn't that important. Obviously, on a game day it would be important in terms of who goes in the game first. But in terms of practices, they want to keep both those guys up with the varsity so they're both prepared because neither of them will have experience no matter who it is. And so the fourth quarterback will be the scout team guy. They're not necessarily going to put the third quarterback down with the scout team at least early in the season.
And I think that also speaks to the idea that the competition will move into the regular season as well. Tyler, you watched the defense. Any takeaways?
Yeah, not a ton. I thought it was interesting. I was watching linebacker drills, just a small thing like Drake Bowen was doing a drill alongside Madden Framo, and so. Kingston Viliamo also was going second there, so maybe just an indication like he hasn't been fully healthy all of camp, and so they're just keeping the reps in different ways and using different combinations. So I thought that was interesting to see Bowen and Framo. Those aren't guys that we would necessarily consider as like in the same positions. Obviously going into this year with Drake Bowen as a two-year starter and Madden Framo trying to work into the rotation potentially as that fifth linebacker. And so we see a lot of Jaden Osbury and Jalen Sneed working together and continuing to do that. I was watching them go through the drills. I was impressed with how quickly Jaden Osbury was moving through the drills and attacking the edge blocker, which was just a garbage can, but going through the drill. We're not seeing a lot of man-to-man contact in these drills, unfortunately, but I thought that was kind of interesting. The defensive line working on a lot of the same stuff we've seen before with getting off the snap correctly, the hand-to-hand combat and those kinds of things. And Charlie Partridge is obviously very detailed in his work. I spoke with Armel Mukam after practice, someone we've talked about a lot during preseason camp, because he's really ascended and made a big improvement in his standing on the depth chart this offseason. So I'm working on a story for brewinggold.com on him, have some insight into what he did this offseason, him going through the transfer portal process. And he said, listen, I learned even more about how special Notre Dame is by going through and seeing all these other places and comparing them to Notre Dame. And he felt fortunate that he still had a spot at Notre Dame once he went through that process to be able to come back, and now he's made a charge up the depth chart and might start the season opener against Wisconsin. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to reading that because one can make a pretty good case that Armel Mukam is the breakout star of the offseason for this team. I mean, we saw him get first team reps as early as spring ball, and we were like, maybe they're like Anya's banged up, maybe they're giving the returners just the edge over the transfers. But no, I mean that is very real with him. The strides he's made this offseason. Pretty incredible to watch and hear about.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fascinating. Both the tight ends came in today. James Flanagan and Cooper, I guess not both because there's more than two, but the law firm of Flanagan and Flanagan with an I and an A in the name were able to talk to us. Chris Ash talked to us as well. So we'll have some more information about what those guys all discussed. But yeah, the defense I think is where you want it to be in terms of having confidence going into the season opener. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about what happened in the scrimmage on Friday, and maybe the offense had the upper hand in that, but that's not necessarily to discount where the defense is at and what's ahead for the Irish defense going into the season.
I think we'll finish this video by touching on we finally got our long-awaited tour of Shields Hall, Notre Dame's new football operations building. Very impressive stuff, obviously, but Tyler, do you have any takeaways? And bear in mind, we could only take photo and video of the lobby in this tour, so that's why you don't see it.
I think a headline for fans is that in some way or shape or form, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but the lobby is supposed to be accessible to fans at some, I don't know if you're going to have to pay to get in.
Or potentially game day maybe.
Yeah, or what that's going to look like, but it is pretty cool. Like that is an area that will have some access, whereas it's not like secured for the rest of the facility where there's the facility for the football players, and then obviously the dining room is available to the other sports teams on campus. And so it's kind of neat to see all the other sports athletes in there while Notre Dame is still the football program is still practicing. All the other guys and gals are in there eating But yeah, it's an impressive place. That lobby has all the trophies, similar to what the Goog was like for folks who have been inside the Goog lobby. That sort of got shut down more towards the end of the use of the Goog for the football program. But all the Heisman trophies, all the national awards, and some interactive stuff with that too. Even there's like a legacy board that if you're a former player, you can look up and find any former Notre Dame player listed there. So that's kind of cool. Some cool touches, and a very impressive place. Just feels palatial. It feels huge. Like the weight room itself. I think Ron Paulus said 30 racks they have in there in terms of different individual weight stations for those guys, and it's massive. They have a turf down the middle, a turf hill for speed training specifically that Lauren Lando had requested, and so it's something he wanted to have as part of their training room. So a pretty impressive place. I haven't been in a lot of different football facilities, but it's hard to imagine that there's much nicer around the country.
And I think you mentioned Lando giving input on the weight room. I thought it was really interesting just how specific that input went. Like he controlled like the angle of the speed ramp that they're using. Like he put in a lot of input. Marcus Freeman had a lot of input. It was his idea to have a big sign outside the players' locker room that says "Choose hard." I thought that was a nice touch. A lot of other people, like department heads and the Notre Dame staff, helped design what that building looks like, and I think everyone will be very happy with the finished product if you're concerned about the Notre Dame football program. I think that's about it from us for this video. We are getting much closer and closer to the season. This was actually our last practice access of the preseason, ideally until Notre Dame prepares for the college football playoff. Until then, we will have tons of content on the site. Stay tuned to blueandgold.com, offering a 75% off deal on your first subscription. Our season kickoff sale is underway. So I'm Jack Sobel, that's Tyler James. We will see you next time.